So I've made it to country number 4, Lithuania, and capital city number 4. This is Vilnius. I don't know much about this city at all, but this church behind me belongs to the Jesuits, has been used also as an Orthodox church. But interestingly, after the Second World War, under communism, it was a museum to atheism, and now it is a place of worship. I think that says a lot actually about atheism. It cannot replace faith in God. But yeah, I don't know much about Vilnius. I know Lithuania is a more Catholic country than Estonia and Latvia. Apparently Vilnius has lots of churches on every corner, so much more religious country here in the Baltics, probably very much influenced by Poland, which is its near neighbour to the south, and also apparently one of the largest old towns anywhere in Europe, so interesting to explore it. It's very hot here, so I'm going to have a little wander. One thing I have read about Vilnius is that of the Baltic cities, the Baltic capitals, it is apparently the least touristy, the least well known. It certainly feels a lot quieter today, but then it is a Sunday, so it'd be interesting to see what it's like tomorrow. But first impressions, an attractive city. So that's a very interesting church. It's part of the Greek Catholic Church, so a different rite to the Latin Catholic Church, which is what most of us might be familiar with. Their rite is from the Eastern tradition, but they are in full communion with the Pope. So interesting, very different look and feel of the churches to typical Latin rite Catholic churches. So I read about this place. This is a self-declared republic in the middle of Vilnius, and it's the Bohemian part of the city. So I'm going to have a little wander around, see what I can see. It looks interesting. So according to the sign behind me, this tree here was planted by the Dalai Lama. So this is the old prison here in Vilnius, which apparently has been turned into some sort of cultural centre. I'm going to see if it's open. It's right in the centre, so apparently it's lots of stuff going on here. So I'm going to have a little look. So to my surprise, I've discovered that they are actually doing a tour tonight at 8 o'clock in the prison. It takes 2 hours. Managed to get the very final ticket, so I thought, well, that'd be interesting. So I've got an hour to kill, so I'm just going to go for a little wander before I have to come back. But it looks quite interesting in there. They've got sort of eating places and music venues and stuff like that. So good use of this old prison. Obviously no longer in use anymore. So first impressions of Vilnius, having spent the afternoon wandering around the city. It does seem more chilled, more laid back than the other cities, certainly more chilled than Riga, but then again it's much smaller than Riga. Population of Vilnius is about 500,000, Riga is over 1 million. It's definitely true what they say about there being lots of churches. There seem to be churches on pretty much every street corner in the old town, and it's a very attractive place. Yeah, it's a nice city. Again, like the other Baltic cities that I've visited, very clean. I think Vilnius, Lithuania, has more of a Polish influence as well, although I was just looking at visitor statistics for this city, and they do get a lot of visitors from Belarus. Lithuania has a big border with Belarus. Now I don't know if that's still the case with the political situation at the moment, but certainly used to be. So yeah, nice city. Again, if you're thinking about coming somewhere to visit, historic places to eat and drink, then Vilnius should be on your list. So there's a real contrast between the old city, which is to my right, which I think is on the north bank of the river, and the very modern commercial district, which is on the south bank, which is presumably where all the banks are and the commercial centre for Vilnius. A real contrast between the south bank and the north bank. So there's a big sign behind me on that building. I don't know if you can see it very clearly. It says Putin, The Hague is waiting for you. And I've noticed lots of Ukrainian flags travelling through the Baltic states. Obviously that isn't very surprising, but I think obviously for the Baltic states the difference is that Russia is a very close neighbour. In fact, many of the Baltic states border Russia. So I think they feel quite threatened by Russia. So Estonia, Latvia, they have large borders with Russia. Lithuania, where I am now, has a border with Kaliningrad and borders Belarus, which is obviously a close ally of Putin. So I think these Baltic states, although they're part of NATO, feel quite vulnerable and quite threatened by what's happening in Ukraine, and obviously standing in solidarity with Ukraine, but also maybe realizing that it wouldn't take much for something similar to happen to them. So there's a lot of support shown for Ukraine in the Baltic states, as there are in many places, but particularly I've noticed it as I've been travelling through these various countries. Anyway, it's now time to get back to the prison, otherwise I'm going to miss my tour. This is the most beautiful little wood along a lovely stream, and you'd never guess that we're right in the centre of Vilnius. The river looks incredibly clean, the woods are beautiful, no litter, it really is amazing. And as I say, you're in the centre of the capital city, but you feel like you're out in the countryside. It's wonderful. As I mentioned earlier, when I was coming to Vilnius, I didn't know anything about the city, and to be totally honest, I thought Vilnius was probably be the most boring, the least attractive and the least interesting of the cities that I was visiting. In some ways I felt like I was starting at the top with Helsinki and it would gradually go downhill from there, but Vilnius has been a real surprise. It's a beautiful city. In fact, we've got an advertising campaign apparently where they describe it as the G-spot of Europe. Not many people know where the G-spot is, but once they find it, well, you know what they're getting at.
Так, другой стороной надо. Поверните неправда.
Having spent the last week or so touring cities, I've actually come out today to the countryside I've travelled about half an hour or so outside of Vilnius to a beautiful little town called Trakai, but the main attraction here in this town is of Trakai Castle, which is actually built on an island, apparently one of the very few castles, so they claim, in Europe built on an island. It's also a very beautiful little town surrounded by forests and a lake, and I thought it'd just be nice to come out of the city and see this stunning castle. And it's a beautiful location. I'm struck by how forested Lithuania is. Even in the city you're not far from the forest, so it's lovely. So we're going to explore this castle today. Should be good fun.
Ta prasme, aš vis tiek čia ateisiu, tada mes pasidarysim.
Dabar kol kas jie tegu eina. Aš žinau.
So is it worth coming to Trakai? Absolutely. It's a beautiful town, beautiful lake and a beautiful castle in a spectacular setting. However, I'm not sure it's worth paying 12 euros, which is what I paid to go into the castle. I think that's very steep, particularly for what you get to see in the castle. I mean, there are rooms to see exhibitions, but lots of pottery and glassware and things like that. But what you can do is you can walk to the castle, you can walk around the castle as I am doing now, and you can actually sort of go into the entranceway of the castle where you get a good view of the inside of the castle, all for free. So you don't have to pay 12 euros to get into the castle itself. So I would recommend, if budget is tight, come to Trakai, visit the castle, but don't necessarily pay to go in. Just walk around the island, where you get some really good views, by the way, views of the castle, views of the lake, and also just go into the entranceway. You can see the inner courtyard, you can see the main keep, and really that's the main things I think to see. So yeah, great place to come, but 12 euros I do think is very expensive for what it is. And unfortunately the beautiful sunshine has disappeared. I think it's because I packed a swimming towel and swimming shorts and the chance that I might go swimming, but the weather's sort of putting me off at the moment. It's got a lot cooler. May have some rain later, but it's still beautiful. Another thing I should have probably mentioned about the castle as well is it has been heavily restored. A project that they started at the turn of the 20th century, and particularly from the 50s onwards. That doesn't in any way detract from the castle, but as I say, it has been restored.